So hi everyone.
Hello everyone. Welcome to the first Global XR Talks of 2021. So I'm Saskia Groenewegen, with me Sjoukje Zaal, and behind the scenes our colleague Alexander Myers.
Yeah.
And the last time you've seen us was probably last year at the Global XR Bootcamp, our yearly big conference event. So, and we're happy to announce that we already have plans for this year for something similar. We have changed the name because it's not really a bootcamp anymore. It's kind of grown into a conference. So we're calling it now the Global XR Conference. And it will be in November, November 10 to 12, 2021. You can already mark your calendars. And we have a brand new website, globalxrconference.com. And well, last time we decided to be a little bit crazy and try to stay up for 24 hours. So this year we're taking it a bit slower. You know, we're all getting older. So we're going to do it 3 days and then a couple of hours in the evening if you're in Europe, or in the morning if you're in the US, or depending on your time zone, but over 3 days. So, Sjoukje, anything to add?
No, I have nothing to add to that. Yes, we're going to do this for 3 days, and we're very excited. And the last time was a huge success. It went very well. We had a very nice team with all people from the community, and it was really great. And hopefully we can do that even better the next time.
This time.
So,
exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So that's our big news, basically. And then, well, onto the program of today. We have, again, as usual, 2 amazing speakers. So let's bring in our first speaker. There he is, Roel Kooistra.
Hi, good evening.
Welcome.
Hi, Saskia.
So Roel will also introduce himself in a second, but quickly, Roel is the competence lead for Microsoft 365 and Azure development at ShareValue NL, and an expert for SharePoint. Welcome, Roel.
Yeah. Thanks for having me here. I'm very excited.
Good to hear. You have an exciting topic as well. Very curious.
Okay, well, maybe should we start with it?
Yeah. Let's just start.
Okay.
Let's go.
So yeah, welcome everybody with this session with 8 practical tips for designing and engaging user experience in SharePoint Spaces. It's a long title, and the session will mostly be demos. So I'll have a few slides. I was already introduced. My name is Roel Kooistra, competence lead 365 Azure development. I'm a huge virtual reality enthusiast. I like to try out all the stuff that virtual reality has to offer, and also the mixed reality things. Down here you see my LinkedIn and my Twitter, where you can follow me, and I work at ShareValue. So let's start with a short introduction about SharePoint Spaces. I don't know if everybody knows what it is, but let's start with a small introduction. It was first announced on the North American SharePoint conference in 2018. I was immediately very excited about it. It combined SharePoint and virtual reality into one. 2 of my main goals in my work. And it gives a 360-degree user experience that can be built by the end user themselves. So no longer is it needed to have a whole 3D group of people. You can your end users can make them their own. And since November 2020, it's in general available across the world. On the roadmap, it's still on rolling out, but yeah, all the tenants I've seen, it's already there, so you can use it in your enterprise tenants now. Browsers which support WebGL 2 are needed, so Chrome or Edge Chromium are best. Designing for a SharePoint space is quite different because yeah, we used to design websites which are flat. You see 2D content, maybe some 3D images or models on a website. But right now we have a 360-degree canvas, so the user that you're designing something for can look around, he can interact with stuff, and it's a whole different way of approaching the design. Also, you have to take the perspective differences with it, because the user is put inside a space, so he sees stuff around him and he can interact with stuff. Things could be maybe scary or not really good to see. And also there is this weird thing that I'll show you later on between the edit mode and the user mode, because in the edit mode you can actually go up and down and go through the models, and you cannot do that in the user mode. So you have to take that into account. Because you put the users in the middle of a space, like in a small world, you have to think about the story that you want to tell and where they look and how they interact with all your elements that you built. We're going to see it in the demos. So, as I said earlier, this is going to be a demo-heavy session. So, I want to show you the first demo of creating your space and what options you have to create a great space. We create a space just like we create a page, and immediately we are greeted by the choice for a structure. If you want to build a gallery or amphitheater or arch, we'll come back to that later. For now, I will choose a terrace, and I will make a space. So now SharePoint made a space for me. It looks a bit flat on your desktop, but you can look around by dragging your mouse around. And as you can see, it's like a bubble. And I have the disk behind underneath me now, because that's the structure I chose. And here we have the space design. And in space design, we can change what we use. And here we can use all the structures again. So we have the gallery, and this one puts a disk just the same as under your feet, but on top of your head. So you get a little bit less screen space from the background. You also have the amphitheater, which creates a swooshing structure through the whole room. And the arch. And as you can see, some structures are more confining than others. Some make it like almost as if you're in a room, and others are really open. The terrace is the most open one. And that's also something that you have to keep in mind when you use these structures, that if you have a functional 360-degree background, like this one, where you want to show the beautiful surroundings with the mountains and the water, then a structure like the amphitheater may not be the best choice. So there's you have to keep that in mind when you're choosing the structures and the background with what your goal is for the space. For the backgrounds, you have all these standard out-of-the-box stock photos, where you can look around. These you get from Spaces, so you can use them. But sometimes they're a bit too crowded, and you don't want something like that. So then you can use illustration. And the illustration is already a little less crowded. It's just a few shades. You could use a color. And if you put this together with the amphitheater, I think this is the most the structure that has the most stuff around you. You can see the Amphitheater is not that bad at going over your 360-degree image, because it's not that important that you see the image. And we have sand dunes. So if your subject in the space is mostly inside the space and not the 360-degree around you, outside of the terrace, then these things could be fine. You also have the color, and there you can just choose any color you want. And this is even less less obtrusive than the other one, so you can actually use this, and then there's nothing to distract the user from the topics that you may want to show. That's something to keep in mind. And the last one is of course, the most fun one, and that is the custom one, where you can upload. Let me upload one. So now we have a functional 360-degree background, I think. It's the University of Rotterdam, shown from the Euromast. And now you see that the amphitheater is a bit weird. You're up in the sky. You actually want to see everything, or at least most everything. So the terrace is a much more logical choice to take for this kind of space. Of course, it depends on what you build your space for, but as we will see later on in another demo, doing this with the open clouds is a good choice. But say that, for instance, we want another custom image. We take this one. So right now we're inside a forest, and forest is a nice background, but maybe your space is to show off some new art, and then maybe the arch or the geodome could be a better choice, because then you have here you have the open space, you can look into the forest, but here you have the more confined space, and maybe you want to put your art on top of the structures, because you can put models straight onto the edge. So yeah, the choice for a structure and a background really comes together when you're creating a space. Now, another thing that is often overlooked, I think, is audio. We come from web, where in Web 1.0 we had audio all over the place with the dancing bananas and audio everywhere. And then we said, yeah, audio in websites is maybe not the best idea, so maybe we'd have to do that less. But when we're in a space and you put on an audio file, which could be anything, but for instance, in this case, we could put on a nature sound. And you hear birds, and you have really the feeling as if you're in a forest. And that can really add to the immersion of the person that is using your space. And you can change here which ones you want to get some out of the box. You can also put on your own audio file, which plays in a loop in the background. And you can also put in a welcome message, and this one will only play. The welcome message will only play when the user comes into the space. So it's the first time that he opens the space, he enters it, and then there's a welcome message. So say, for instance, that you're building a classroom, you can put on a audio message when the space loads that tells the user that is a classroom for instance, a rocket engine. And you can also take the user through the story of the space by telling them like what models they can see and what the order could be that they look in at the models. Because the user, it's a 360-degree experience, so the user can decide himself if he looks left or right. In web, we get the user and we know that they will probably start on top and go down. But here, the user can go left and right, so we have to take that into account. And the audio file can add to that if you want to make a educational space. The last thing that you can do for audio also is that you can add audio to models. So let's say, for instance, that we want a model, and we can, this is the Spaces upload screen, and we can choose here if we want to upload something ourselves from a site for OneDrive or the 3D catalog. And the 3D catalog is actually all 3D models that you get from SharePoint Spaces themselves. These you can just choose and use in your space. Not long ago, I think they added the 3D icons. So let's say you want a sound. So we have a 3D icon for sound. We add that to our space. And make it a little bigger. And we don't want it to stand in front of the forest. So select it that's where we want it. Well, we can bind the function to this specific model. Here we get all the model settings, and some of them will come back later on. But right now, for the audio, we want a trigger. So here we have an on trigger already, which says inspect, and we can add more actions. So we can say play audio, upload a audio file from a link. And if I publish the space, then I can look at it as if I'm a user. So I can click it and I see the 3D model. And then down here, I can either shrink it back to where it was, or I can play the sound. So then the sound will start to play. And if I want it differently, I can do that by changing the trigger. I can delete the trigger that was already on there. So I can get this trigger, the inspect trigger, and I can delete it. And the more actions I also delete, because that the more actions is the menu that you see underneath the model when you inspect it. So if we delete this one and we add an action over here and we play audio, then we can choose the audio file and it will play when we click on it straight away. So that's how you can use audio to really enrich your SharePoint space and make the user either feel as if they're in a forest or give them a welcome message or a audio tour through your subject that you want to show. The other thing I want to touch is the use of how you can highlight content in your space, because right now this space is really empty. I only have a background and a structure and one model. But if I go to one of the spaces I created earlier, so this one already has more than the other one. And this could be a lesson about the Rocket X of SpaceX Raptor rocket engine. could be. It's not, of course, but it could be. And well, here you see the engines. They're floating in the air with a little sign with the name of the element in it. Here you see the Raptor engine fuel lines. Here you see the Raptor engine combustion. So here you already see some highlighting of content, and that's this is just the base model, so the user can look at it, turn it around, see all the parts on the model. You can zoom out, you can zoom in, put it back, and I already created a form of highlighting because here I want to show the user the same engine, but this time I want to highlight the fuel line. So now the user can turn it around and you can see the fuel lines, which are made red. So now the highlighting is part of the model. So for this, I didn't actually do something in Space. I changed the 3D model, but it's a way how you can in SharePoint Spaces highlight stuff that you really want to stand out. And in the last case, this shows the combustion engine of the whole rocket. And then I have a video, because you can also add videos to your SharePoint space. And yeah, the video is also just floating around, and I can, if I want to, I can put it on the ground. Make it lower. And I could also make it bigger. But yeah, I think it looks kind of nice, but a bit messy. I think it's still a bit messy. And Spaces comes with a building functionality that I think is actually quite good to really highlight content that you want to show inside the space, so around you. And that I also created earlier. And this functionality is called Podiums. So you can give all your models and actually all the things that you put into the space, you can give a podium. So now the engine is shown on top of a podium, and it really highlights this model. So say, for instance, that you want to add some more stuff to this, but it's more like of a background, a nice decoration of your space, not really functional. You can put it in there behind all this stuff, and still your content would be highlighted because those are on the podium, so they are probably the most important parts. So if you want to see how we can add the podium, it's actually quite simple, but let's see. We add another 3D object. And it's that one. So we have the Raptor engine with the combustion engine, and we want to turn it 90 degrees. Down here you have the tools that you can use to quickly manipulate the item, and you can also use the structures around it and drag and pull those to do it. But yeah, usually these are more fine-grained, so you can add more detailed sizing and stuff like that. And if you look at them, then you have the radius, so then turning your model on the x-axis, the y-axis, the z-axis, and the size. And over here you have the angle, how it's placed for the user in relation to how he opens the space. So 180 degrees would be directly behind him, and this is the radius inside out. So the lower this number, the closer it gets, the higher, the further it gets. And you can go to almost the edge of the platform. But let's say for this one we want 4. And then we have this, the height. Now the height is, I can go up and down and have it in the air, but I want to show the podium. So here I have the podiums, and it was easy as that. And then we can change how high. Something I still miss on the podiums, which would be nice, is giving it color, because right now I can only do black podiums, which are also using the shadows. So this is the same podium as this one, but because of the lighting, it shows differently. So that was quite easy to add the podium, and now we have a nice podium to the engine, and I also added a podium to the video. So now the video doesn't look like it's floating in the air, but it's standing on top of something. Another useful thing I think about the podiums is that you can be easier to combine content that you use for a model. So say for instance, I want to add a description to this SpaceX Raptor. I can do a text file, add it over here. And I want to do this SpaceX Raptor sheet. So now it's adding the document. And instead of just floating around like the other one, I can make this be part of the other structure. So I can put it over here. Now it's a bit to the front. So now it's more like a part of the whole model, and because of the podium of the other model, I can place it on top of it, and you immediately see that it's part of that, and it belongs to that particular model. Now, something curious about the documents is that only the first page is shown, and I cannot do anything to go to another page. This is a miss, I think. Should be that you could look at the other pages. The only thing to do now is that you can bookmark it so that you can look it up later in SharePoint, because the document is somewhere in SharePoint. And you can open it in a new tab. But if you do this when you're in virtual reality, then you are pulled out of the space and you're putting to your browser. And so you have to take off your VR helmet and look at the document. It's not that useful yet, but you can make fact sheets for it. For instance, for this one, we add a combustion engine scheme. It's on top of the podium. With the, you know that you only have one page, so you can make the page really stand out and make like an overview of how the combustion engine would work, and the user can read it. Now the user can also with the files can zoom in and out, so they can go quite close. And in virtuality, it's also good readable. Another thing that you can use to do better to highlight stuff is adding animations. Now, SharePoint Space has some animated objects itself. So if we add a 3D object, a favorite of mine is the plane engine. So make it bigger. So you actually see everything turning and working internally. Now the user can look at it, turn it around, see how the whole inside of the model works. And I think this really shows the power of the 3D models and spaces, because this is a plain engine, but there's also a heart that you can use to show people how it would work. Now these are all models that are part of SharePoint Spaces themselves. But of course, you can add your own 3D models. There are some restrictions in size and file format, but they can contain animations. And with this, you can really build a fine, engaging space for someone to learn. Another topic I want to I think, yeah, there was the first demo. So yeah, we discovered the options of space design using audio and spaces and highlighting important content. And I think with the basics, you can already create great SharePoint spaces. The next demo would be putting the available space in perspective, because yeah, we're designing for virtual reality. That should always be the first priority, that you're creating this for virtual reality. The user can, of course, use it in their desktop, but yeah, I think you really have to put the virtual reality up front. So you have to keep the user perspective in mind and plan the layout of the space. We're going to look at what we were creating up until now. So with a viewpoint, I mean that I'm in the user mode now, and I can look around. But if I haven't selected anything, I can scroll with my mouse and can try zooming whatever I want. I cannot go anywhere. So there's no locomotion in your space, so you cannot run or walk, and you cannot go around stuff at the moment. You can just stand in the middle. And the weird part in this is that if I edit the space, then I'm still in the same space. But if I scroll right now, then all of a sudden I can zoom out to the top of the space, which is great for designing, because now I can play with the layout and say that this should be far more to the edge and make faster changes and more of an overview. But if I'm down here and I've scrolled accidentally a little bit like this, and I'm looking around, I'm putting everything wrong for the user, because the user would be seeing it like this. So far more down. And that's something that you have to keep in mind when you're designing the SharePoint spaces, because if you accidentally are a little bit higher than normal and the user gets it over here, then your whole experience could be ruined, because the user cannot see the models the way you intended, and the space is less usable. That's also what I meant earlier with that VR should be at the front of your design, because if you design this for desktop, it's a whole nother world than the VR, because in VR the user will look around and use its hands and the controllers to get things and interact with your world. Another thing that's a bit that takes a little bit to get used to is your starting point. So if I refresh this, then this is my starting point, and I can change this in the space design. So here if I take a custom 360 degree, I get two sliders here, and I can change the height, but I can also change the rotation set at the starting view. So what you see now is that my design stays the same, but the background turns around. So say for instance that the default was something like this, but this is not what I want to show the user. What I find most important is this part. So then I can set it with the rotation over here. And it's also an important part in the arch, because right now you see that if this would be what I wanted to show, then probably I would have put the window over there. So I can turn it around. And my starting point is somewhere over here now, but I have this nice view in the structure I chose. So you can really play with that and look and keep the user in mind. Another thing to keep in mind with the 360 degree photos that you create or download or buy is that the perspective could be a bit off. I've created my own 360 degree photos, and I noticed that for the space background, you are placed actually a little bit above the photo that you shot. So you're a bit higher, and it could be weird. In outdoors, you don't notice it that much, but when you shoot 360 degree footage indoors, you really see the difference in height. So you have to keep in mind that sometimes you have to take the pictures a bit lower to make them better usable in SharePoint Space. And also in the 360 degree guides, which we will touch later on, the viewpoint there is actually different from the 360 degree backgrounds in the space. So you have to take the photos a little bit lower there also. Actually, sorry, I'm sorry about that. Yes, take the photos at eye height there. So they changed the perspective there to eye height, and here it's a little bit higher. So you lose some detail if you wanted to. Let's say that, for instance, you want the floor to be straight down on the sand. I cannot get over there now because the photo was the perspective is a bit too high. So that's something to keep in mind when you're creating your own 360 degree content. Another thing to keep in mind is the overlapping of models. You can, of course, place your models all around in the space, but you have to also keep in mind that they don't stand in front of each other. And yeah, in that case, the helicopter view is quite nice because then you can see which models are giving the issues. If we go back to the earlier created, so earlier we were busy with this space, which doesn't have much in it now. But if we edit this and go back to it is somewhere in the side lessons space, picking it up for some reason, so I'm uploading it again. This one, not this one. So we delete it. So right now we're back on the top of the Euromast. We have the sky above us. So let's say that we want to create a deviation space, we can, of course, use a animated model at an earliest stage of aviation. It should be something like the dinosaurs. Did you see that the perspective? I was already up because I added the 3D model. The spaces placed me in a strange perspective. So I zoomed in to be on the perspective of the user. I want this be a little bit higher and stuff. Go around me, but it's easy to forget that you also, because it's 360 degree, you could also just go up and above. So we put 0 here. Now I look up, and the pterodactyl is flying over me. It's something that I think should not be overlooked. That it's a 360 degree experience, and I have noticed with myself also that you're really fast just doing everything in front of you and forgetting the stuff above you. It could be that your subject doesn't have anything above you, but if it does, like this pterodactyl, then it's really cool for the user that it's flying on top of him over his head. And how it's just one, you could add more and have like a whole flock of pterodactyls over your head. One thing you have to keep in mind is the user, of course, as I said earlier. But if I would place a 3D object really close to the user, and oh, that's good. Pterodactyl out of the way. Let's say we want a scary space. So, keeping the user in mind, it probably would not be a good idea to put the model straight in the face of the user, but behind his back. So it could be that that's what you're going for, but if a user is wearing his virtual reality helmet and you have like a creepy sound and a creepy background, and the user turns around and he gets that in his face, yeah, it could be scary, and it could be what you're looking for. But if it's not, then it's not a good experience. And experience learns that VR experiences, the first VR experience sets the tone for the rest of the VR journey. I think that I covered all the topics that I wanted to use in this demo. Going on to the next demo, keeping your spaces in shape. So you have different users with different hardware, and everyone with a browser can look at it and use it. But yeah, hardware could not be powerful enough to drive it. Microsoft they recommend at least a GeForce 1060 card for 3D models. So putting too much models into one space could be really taxing on your machine. And also there's the case of how do you, if you have multiple models and you want to touch multiple subjects, maybe you have to switch up your space. So I've prepared a demo for that one. And if I look, that's here. So it's the crowded aviation. So I'm an aviation enthusiast that likes to create aviation spaces. So I put there the pterodactyl from earlier, a drone. You already see that it's already getting a bit taxing on the machine, which is quite strong. But yeah, it's already having a bit of issues. So there's no exact number of 3D models that you can have in your space. So yeah, if you want to if you run into this kind of trouble, you want to create more spaces, then there's the case of navigating to another space. You want the user, if there are in spaces, to stay in spaces. So let's see how we can navigate to another space. So let's edit this one and add yet another 3D model, of course, just to see if we can fry the 3D card. We have the 3D icons, and here we have the general icon for going outside to another place. Usually it's another website outside of this domain. So, but yeah, this is we can use this to go to another space. And here we have the on trigger, and it's on inspect. We don't want to inspect it. We want the trigger that we want to link to another space. So I already created the SpaceX with Podiums. So it's easy as that. I added it to the model and republish it. And of course, here I added the rocket engines, but I want to switch it up and I want to create another one. So I created space here, and if I click this now, and the user clicks it, then we will load into another space, and the user will not be taken out of his existing space and put back in a 2D world where he has to put off his helmet and put it back on. So with this, you can really go from one space to another and build a rich experience with multiple spaces going on multiple subjects. And also it's a way to keep the performance in hand by only adding like 3 or 4 3D models to a space if you know that your users are not using heavy equipment. The last thing I want to show, because I'm running a bit tight on time, so I will be touching on this quickly. No, not the video. The video is a whole other world. Second. What I'm doing. So I'm creating a 360-degree tour. So I add this to here and upload, and now it wants a whole bunch of images. So I added 7 images, which are uploaded, and putting a editor. And if the user clicks it, he will go to the guided tour, but we're gonna do it in the tour builder. So right now I'm in the tour builder. I can add this. I can set starting locations. So I can say that this is the starting view of the image. This is what it should be. And then I can add stuff to the 360 degrees. So I can link to another image, or I can annotate it with text, images, video, audio, 3D objects. So let's say that we link to this one. Okay, it's fine. And then we navigate to go to that one. And now we can edit the rest, and like this you can create a whole experience going through a building, through an office, for the user to create a, for instance, an onboarding experience. Don't forget to, if you use the dots to go through your experience, that you put things back so that the user can always go back through the photos, so that you link back to an image like this. And I think that is what I wanted to cover on the part of the 360-degree guided tours. And I think it's an important part of the SharePoint Spaces landscape. It's really easy for the end user to create wonderful 360-degree guided tours. If you want to see more of this, you can find it online. in my other session that I held earlier. I think that was my session. And are there any questions?
Yeah, we have a couple of questions. Great session. Looks really impressive. I'm a big fan of it. Always have been a big fan of creating all sorts of customizations in SharePoint. I will cover one question right now, and maybe you can take some time afterwards to answer the rest in the chat window, because we're a bit over time. But
Okay.
I will pick one question of Yo. Do you also see this being used a lot in real-world solutions or at customers, for instance?
If I see the SharePoint Spaces at customer solutions, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think so, because well, there are a lot of customers that already have 3D models, for instance, a furniture fabric. They have the models already, so they should. There are tools to create to convert those models into smaller ones that can be used in spaces. But it would be great to have the space to go to your customers and show things like that to your customer in VR, so that they can really see how it would look in the real world. And with the 360-degree background, you can make a photo of a shop and make a rack for a shop and put it in a context of where it will be. So I think there are already a lot of real-world enterprise things to do with this.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds really awesome. Okay, thanks so much.
Okay, yeah, thank you all for this opportunity.
Bye-bye. So our next speaker is Ivana Tilka. Hi, Ivana.
Hey, girls. How are you?
Hey, Ivana.
We are good. How are you?
I'm okay. It's a pleasure to be with you. I'm from Argentina, so we're pretty far away.
Yes, we are. And it's not the first time that you are here, right?
It's not. It's not the first time, but I think the other time I was with Bruno, if I can recall. I think we shared one session. We talked about not only HoloLens, but I think it was Azure Kinect also.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was a fully packed session with all innovative, cool stuff in it. Yeah.
And funny stuff. Bruno likes to be really funny when he gives sessions.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very entertaining. Also, I remember all the pictures you showed in between. It was a great talks. So I'm really looking forward to this one.
Yeah.
Okay, I will try to be funny, but I think this one is more deeply into development. But I'm always making jokes, so okay. I also usually make some jokes with my accent and my pronunciation. So I'm pretty sure you guys will laugh a little bit. Hello, Justin.
Okay, great. So this time you're going to talk about an XR application for the Oculus Quest.
Yes.
How are you going to build that? Yeah.
Yeah. So the idea is for to try to develop a small game from scratch and try to understand the difference between developing for HoloLens 2, which most of the training online with MRTK are actually for HoloLens 2, but instead of using HoloLens 2, because for me it's too expensive, I'm going to share it how to use it with Oculus Quest. Awesome. So okay, I hope people can understand me, and hope it's not difficult too difficult.
Okay, I think they will. So good luck. The floor is yours.
Okay, great. Let me share my screen. 1 second. Okay. Please let me know if you guys are seeing my Unity. Okay, perfect. There we are. Everything's okay. I will start. So everyone, thank you for joining today. It is a pleasure always to share with the Global XR team. I'm Ivana. As I said, I'm speaking from Argentina, from a little city called Córdoba, right in the middle of the country. I'm currently a Microsoft MVP for artificial intelligence, but I also work as a quality manager for the company 3XM Group, which is the one that you are seeing on the screen right now. And I decided to play or create a small game using the logo of the company and having fun a little bit, trying to drop down some bugs. So the idea is for us to build that. So let's see what we are going to be building, and hopefully the video launch awesome. So as you can see in here, I have my hands are being tracked by Oculus, and one of my hands actually has a ball that has some physics on it. And I can throw the ball, and there are some bugs in there that we don't like bugs at 3XM Group, so we drop them. And the idea is that you drop them all from the small tables that you are seeing on front. Of course, what you're seeing on the screen, you can change and adapt it to whatever you want to the application to run. If you don't want the environment, we will see how to change it and create something more appealing for you guys. But this is what the idea of the entire session is about. So let's begin. And we will begin. I always like to say that when you are thinking on development, or when you think on developing any application or any game, you first need to think on the components that you need to add functionality to. So the first thing that I need to think on of this game is two of the main characters. Like I say, one is our logo, which is the 3XM logo, and the other one are the bugs. Okay, so most of the functionality will are going to be assigned to these two components. But there is also one important component, which is the environment. So where are we going to place our game? So what we need to consider when building for our Oculus when it comes to environment. So we want to place our bugs in the environment, and the spatial awareness system that we already know from MRTK, which is the picture you can see on the left. This system is used to bring real-world environment mesh data into the Unity scenes that we are working. So this is useful on augmented reality devices such as HoloLens, as I mentioned, where we can use the scanned world mesh for features such as physics and occlusion. But on virtual reality devices such as Oculus, there is no scanned world mesh provided yet. So to support a mixed reality device that actually works cross-platform, both R and VR, there needs to be a virtual environment available for the bugs to be placed upon. So the bugs, remember, we are talking about the components. So which in our game today, we will build the environment you are seeing on the picture in the right. And as I said, I will also give you some tips in order to replace that environment with something more fancy or cooler. Okay, with that said, let's first begin with our project. So I already have a project in here, as you can see. It already has all the configuration necessary to work on Oculus, but the idea is for me to explain everything. So as you can see, I have an empty scene in here, so I'm going to create a new scene. And what we have in here, first of all, I selected the Android platform because it's the one that Oculus Quest runs. And the other thing I already did, which you need to do in order to work with MRTK, I imported the package. Let me go to the package. I imported the foundation package. In this demo, I used the version 2.5.3. So those two basic steps you need to do in order to start working with MRTK. But that's not it for working with Oculus. Now, the other thing we need to consider is to install from the asset store the Oculus Integration package. So when you go to the asset store and you can create an account, it's free. Let me search for it. You in here can, okay, this is going to, this always happens when I put my screen a little bit smaller so you guys can see it. Okay, so I'm going to search for the Oculus Integration package. I already bought it, but I already installed it on this project, but I wanted to show you how you guys can see it through the, let me close this, through the asset store. Let me go scroll down. Okay, as you can see, I also already have it bought, and you need to just click on integrate. So the Oculus package, you will have the bottom here, the import. You will have the imported this folder that you are seeing under my asset folder. That is the Oculus folder. So inside this package, you will have different components that you can use in order to develop for Oculus. You have sounds, you have some UI components, but in this demo, we are not going to use any of them. Maybe the sounds, I will see how everything goes and the time. But once we integrate the Oculus package, then we need to select the Oculus project configuration. So in here, it's important that if you want to only work with Oculus controllers, which, as you know, are these ones, you can select only the controllers options in here. But in my case, I like to work with both. I like how the hands see inside the Oculus application, so I selected the controllers and hands. That's it when it comes to integrating Oculus on the project. Now, there are a couple of other things that we need to configure, which are under project settings. We need to import our XR planning management. And once we import it, the option that we work with Oculus will be displayed in here, and we will select it and enable it. So that's it for the project. Now, what do we need in our scene in order to work for Oculus? So as usually, when we build applications for HoloLens 1 or HoloLens 2, you select on Mixed Reality Toolkit and you add your scene. And in here, as you guys know, and if you don't, you have a lot of resources under Microsoft Doc that you can read on. There are different configuration profiles that you can already select that have all the necessary configuration for the application to run on the device that you choose. As you can see in here, I have HoloLens 1, HoloLens 2, and I have Mixed Reality, and I have XR SDK, and I have Leap Motion and OpenXR. So right now, we need our applications, we are focused that it needs to work in Oculus. So we need to select the default XR SDK configuration profile. So once we select that profile, you need now to integrate the Oculus integration package into this scene. How do you do this? You go to Mixed Reality Toolkit under Utilities, Oculus, and you select Integrate Oculus Integration Unity Module. So you will select that, and everything will be now integrated, and your application, if I put something on my scene right now and port it to Oculus, it will work perfectly, and it will detect my hand. So important item. This configuration, if you run this demo right now, I'm going to show what we are going to build. I'm going to test it in my PC. So if I leave this configuration profile, a notification will come up that it won't find the Oculus camera. But in this example, I will select the HoloLens 2 option because I want to test it on my PC, okay? So that's it for all the configuration. Everything is okay. We are ready to work and start working with our application. So now, what do we need to do? There is something really important that we need to create, which are our layers. So we use this in our entire Unity project to work better with the Unity editor as a way to create group of objects that share particular characteristics. So we use layer primarily to restrict operations such as rendering, so that they are only applied to relevant group or objects that we want to control. So this system is useful when we are building complex systems or developing games, and we want to add functionality, collision functionality or collision detection. So how do we add layers? It's pretty easy. Just you simply go to Edit, Project Settings, and select the layers, the tags and layers tab. Once you have that, you will see the option to add layers in here. So remember that we were working with 3 main components, one being the logo, the other one being the group of bugs, and the other one being the environment. So I'm going to add those layers. So for the first one, I'm going to add the bugs layer. So all my bugs are going to be placed on that layers. And then I'm going to add a logo layer in order for the logo of 3XM Group to be placed in that layer. And what about the environment? So remember that for virtual reality, we are actually kind of replacing the spatial awareness system. So we need to set our VR environment inside the layer of spatial awareness. So I will just leave it. It is already in all the projects as the layer 31. So I won't add another layer for our environment. Great. So we now need to select the physics tab, and also we need in that physics tab modify what we call our layer collision matrix. So this is a layer collision matrix that we are seeing in here. So why do we need to do this? We need to do this because the layer-based collision detection is a way to make a game object collide with another game object. That is set up to a specific matrix that will help us with that. So let's go over here. And under physics, I will go over here and I can see that I have my bugs layer and my logo layer that I just added. So in here, I need to make sure that which one are the objects that are going to collide with each other. So in this case, I have my bug is going to collide with the logo. So, and I have my logo being able to collide with my environment. So when I drop the ball, I want the ball to hit the walls, for example. But I also want that when the logo hits the bugs, it has some reaction on it. Great. So now we will open the quality tab and we will ensure that all platforms are on the option very low configuration. So we will ensure that Unity environment favors performance over quality, since we want to ensure that we hit 60 frames per second on the device. So for that, I will go to the quality tab, and on the top you can see that I have the different levels for all the platforms. We are working right now on Android because it works with Oculus, so I'm going to set it to very low. But I am also going to test on my PC, so I'm going to set all of them to very low. So once we have this, we can continue working now with each one of the components, okay? Perfect. Let me check if there are. I'm just checking if there are any questions. And maybe I can answer question at the end. Okay. So now what I'm going to do, focus on the first thing, which is the logo, the sphere that represents my logo. So for that, I'm going to add a sphere. So I'm in my project in here, and I'm going to create an empty game object with, it's going to be my logo. I'm going to resize it because it's actually pretty big. And inside that logo, I'm going to add a sphere. And that's it. So now I have my sphere. Now, what else do I need to configure in order to add more functionality to my sphere? So we are going to add, first of all, a sphere collider, which is a basic sphere-shaped collision primitive, okay? So my suggestion for you, if you are developing a game, is that all components or all game objects, that you haven't seen have a collider. In this case, it's going to be a sphere collider because we're working with a sphere, okay? And I'm going to leave the properties default that we have in there. The other thing we need to, we will have is a rigid body component that will enable our logo to act under the control of physics. So for you to know, the rigid body can receive forces to make your objects move in a realistic way. Any game object that you plan, that must contain a rigid body if you want it to be influenced by gravity. So let's add a rigid body. So I will go here and I will add the rigid body. I will explain later something about rigid body when we add our environment, but let's focus on what I'm doing right now. So I'm adding a rigid body, but I need to have the is kinematic option enabled. So kinematic rigid bodies affect other objects, but they won't be affected by physics. So that's something that we want for our ball, because we want it to have an effect on bugs, but we don't want it to be dropped every time, because it can drop because of gravity, okay? Great, so now we will add some MRTK components. So these ones that we already added are part of Unity. So now we will add some MRTK components. First of all, we need to add the overlap component, which provides a solver that overlaps with the tracked object. This will automatically add a solver handler component. And for you to know, the solvers are components that facilitates the means of calculating an object's position and also the orientation according to a predefined algorithm that we had. So specifically, the solver handler, that is the one that is going to be added automatically, handles the solver components that are attached to this logo. So let's go over here and let's add an overlap component. Great. So as you can see, it automatically added the solver handler. So we need to add in here something that is the tracked target type. We could track the head, we could track the controller's tray, we could track the hand joints, or we could custom or override any track. So I'm going to use the controller ray, and I'm going to use it for left and right. So it's going to detect my hands, both right or left. In case I only wanted to work with the right, I only want, for example, the ball to be grabbed by my right hand, I could select the right hand here and leave the left without checking. It's the same for me. And that's it. I'm not going to add any more logic on it. I had some other items in here, but they are not as important right now for this demo. Great. So now what? We need to start thinking on what's the ball going to do in the game. So the first thing we need to do is understanding the state of our logo. So the logo has three main states. One is what I call the free state. Basically, that state is when the ball it's at the beginning of the game. So when it's not grabbed by a hand and it's not thrown, it's not assigned to anything. So that's the free, which is the first one. The second one, which is going to be the one tracked by a source, is going to be when the ball is grabbed by the hand. And the third state is when we drop the ball, so we can manage the physics, what happens when we throw the ball and everything over there. And okay, great. So to start working on state, we first need to create some script, right? So what I have in here, I already have a script created, but I have it empty. So I created a basic script. As you can see in here, it has only the reference to system collection, the generic and the Unity engine, and it's called logo, and it has nothing. I deleted the functions that came as default in here. So we can work from scratch. And what's the first thing we need to do in order to being able to assign functionality to our logo? First of all, we need to add reference to manipulate our logo. What do we need to manipulate from our logo? And the first thing we need to add then is some reference to the components that we have in our logo. So in here, I added a reference to the rigid body that we added. I added a reference to the mesh, which is the sphere has a mesh, which is like how it is drawn and the default components of the sphere as a mesh. And also I added a reference to the solver handler that we added at the end. It actually added automatically when we added the overlap. And as you can see, I'm missing a reference, so I'm letting IntelliSense helping me with this. So I'm using Mixed Reality Toolkit utility solver, so I'm adding that reference at the top. Perfect. So, great. Now what? I don't know, guys, if you want me to stop and answer some questions, or can I continue? Am I alone?
You
Okay.
can continue. Yeah, we do the questions at the end. Is that okay for you?
Oh, perfect. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, awesome. Great. So now what do we need to do? So now we need to add the states of the logo that we said that we had. So we defined 3 states, and I will continue and add those states in here. So as I explained, we have 3 states. The first one being free, which is the one that the logo starts. Then we have the source track, which is the one that was with my hand, in which I was grabbing the ball. And then the physics tracked. And what happens? So those states will be stored in the current state property. And we will have a state update. So we will update each one of the states. I will show this in a moment. First, we need to do some other things. So what other things do we need to do first? So as you know, I only added from here to the bottom, okay? In case you want to see the code. So there are other states that we need to consider, at least for this game, which are the strength states. So the amount of force is actually that is used in launching the ball. This will be determined by a timer that calculates how long the user has been holding the selected gesture bounded by a value. So what does this mean? So basically, when I have my hand open, the ball will be on top of my hand. But when I close my hand, the ball will increase the strength to being thrown far away from the user, okay? So for that, we are going to work on some states that can help us with that. So I have in here some strength state. As you can see, I'm calling it is giving power, and basically it will depend on the amount of value that we have on the timer. So the more I have the ball or the logo grabbed, the more far away it will be thrown, okay? Now that we have the strength states, we have to code the different state of the logo that we mentioned earlier. So these ones. And this function controls whether each component is enabled or not based on each one of the states. So what do I mean by that? Just go in here and for you guys to see what happens in here. So, sorry. There. So if the ball is in free state, we disable everything, including the mesh render. So if the source is tracked, we only enable the overlap that will execute its update property and control the logo's position via tracking the hands. And if physics tracks, we need to enable the rigid body so the ball is manipulated by the physics engine in Unity. So basically, the physics text, remember, is when we leave the ball and the ball falls, okay? And that's what we have on this code in here. Great, so now what? We keep on working with our ball, with our logo. So now, when the user selects via closing their hand, let's go over here. So when the user selects via closing their hands, this will result in an input down event fired by MRTK. And when the user opens their hand, this will result in an input app event fired also by the MRTK. So we need to add the Mixed Reality Input Handler interface that will allow the game object to respond to input event populated by MRTK. How do we do this? Okay, so I will go here and I will, oh my gosh, 1 second, let me open up my toolbox again. There we are. So we will go in here and I will add my interface. So remember we said it was the input handler interface. Now this belongs to MRTK. So of course I need to reference the MRTK input in order to use it. And also I need to declare the interface and I will let IntelliSense do everything for me. So I just click to create, and what happened? It created two events that are at the bottom of my code, which are the ones that we were saying, the input up and the input down. So let's remember, input up, it is when I have my hand without giving force to the ball, and input down, it's when I need the ball to have to generate force and being thrown more far away. Great, let me go back here. Okay, so the Mixed Reality Input Handler that we added provides interface functions for the logo to respond to these input actions. So generally, MRTK only calls this interface if this game object is in focus, okay? For our logo, we want to listen to all input events and filters and filter or respond to only up to particular sources or particular input sources. For example, the hand currently controlling the logo, okay? So in order to do this, we need our logo to subscribe globally to all input events. So the script needs to register itself with the mixed reality input system via what we call the register handler of the input handler interface. So how do we do this? Let me go here. And let me put this in here. So how do we do this? We do this by overriding or creating some events that are the event on the enable and on disable, okay? So in order to use these core components, we need, of course, to reference the actual toolkit. So I will reference them and that's it. So now we need to add Unity events for when we throw the logo and when we get the logo back. This is useful for coordinated actions in our editor. So actually this is not something that you need to code, but I will try to, and I will add something right now. I will go back in here. I don't want Unity to have problems, so let's wait for Visual Studio to update, guys. So what I'm planning on doing here. So let's say I'm grabbing the logo. I want, when I grab the logo, to fire some sound, like a bell or something. And when I drop the logo, I want the event to play another sound. So in order to do that, I will add in here an audio source. And we will use the power of the audio source to add this playable music when the events are fired. So now let me go back to Visual Studio. So then I need to declare these Unity events that I'm going to be using. I'm going to do it at the top so we can be a little bit clear here. And I'm declaring some Unity events. So one is to throw the logo and the other one is to get back the logo. So as you can see, I need to reference the Unity events library, which is this one, in order to use it, okay? Now, what this does, it will let me, as I said, add functionality with audio at the back, okay? So, great. So now we need to define the logic in our script for when an input up or input down event occurs. Let's go back here. But before this, we want to get the Mixed Reality controller instance of our currently tracked hand and the line pointer instance on that hand. So what does this mean? So I need to detect which one is the hand that actually has the control. And in order to do that, let me go back in here. So I will add some code in here that actually can track the ID of the source that is the controller source, okay? I also have these two events in here that we will use it later on. I will reference this one, which is the handness. It's going to use utilities from Toolkit, from Mixed Reality Toolkit. I will explain this in a moment, so I will close them for you to know that I will explain it later. So right now, I already have which one is the hand that has the control, okay? So now what? Before adding the logic we mentioned, there is something else we need to consider. What happens when input up event occurs? So for this, we will create a function that can calculate what happens when I throw the logo, okay? So that function, I will call it throw, is this one. So this is where all the magic happens, guys. So in here, I have the calculation and actually the vector direction and the force that it's going to be added to my rigid body with an impulse. Okay, so what are you talking about, Ivana? So the vector direction, as you can see here, is simply a vector, and we also, that has a rotation, and we also have the throw force that actually is the timer. Remember that we were saying that the amount of time we have our hand closed will be the force that how much far away our logo falls. Then this is where we are going to calculate the power, the timer, and the force amplifier, which is a value that I have in here. So this will calculate how much far away everything needs to fall. Remember that we need to set the current state property to physics tracked, and okay, we need to add that to that force to our rigid body. And this is the one that makes the magic of the ball throwing. Okay, great. Now let's add the logics to the event interface that we created. So these are the event interface that we created, okay? And we have the input up. Let's go back again in here. Input up, remember, input down, okay? And we will go in here and select, first of all, the input up. Great. So what happens when the input is up? Remember, input up. So we will set the current state to source tracked. Remember, source track was when the logo was on the hand. What happens when the input is down? We are going to give power to our logo. That's what happens. Okay, so basically we know that now is source tracked, and we need to give power for order to later on, when we throw the ball, our rigid body can react and fall according to the power we gave to our logo. Okay, and we will now call finally two more functions, which are the awake function and the update functions that actually are part of Unity. And in the awake function, I will set the values we need to for our scene to start working. So what do we need to have in order for our logo start working? We will set the rigid body, the solver, and the mesh. And we will power up the update. Let's go to see what is that. So remember, timer 0. And we also need the logo state update. we will define accordingly, okay? That's everything that actually does the awake. Now, let's go to the update method. The update method, which is this one over here, is saying, okay, so first of all, I have the solver handler track form target as struct. Then we have in here, we have those two functions that we needed to identify, the tracker, the tracked controller, and the tracked line pointer. So these are the two functions I had closed in here. Let's go up, up, up. Where are they? There they are. So this basically only will return the value of the control, and this one will return the value of the pointer. And in here, let's go back in here. If it is, in here I will detect if it is free, if it is source tracked, if it is whatever I need in order to update and throw the visual, which is actually add velocity to where I'm throwing, when I'm throwing the logo. And that's all I need in order to give functionality to our logo. Great, so now what? Did it end? No, it did not end. So I just saved. Let's wait a little bit until Unity stops scrolling in. Great. I will go now and select my logo, and I will add the script, which is this one, to my logo. So now I have the script. So I said we needed to reference the rigid body, the mesh, and the solver handler, but they are empty. So we will select the rigid body that was assigned to my logo. The mesh, as I said, the mesh is this one that is being assigned to my sphere. So, whoops, let's go over here. This always happens. The mesh is the one that is going over here, and the solver handler that actually is assigned to my logo. And then I have two events, which are the throw logo and the get body logo. In here, as we added the audio source to our logo, I will put the logo in there, and now I will say, okay, I want to play one shot, some sound. And in here, as you know, there are a bunch of different sounds that come with MRTK and also come with the Oculus integration package that we can use in order to see what's going on in here. I have no idea what am I selecting, guys. So let's say I'm going to select that when I throw the logo, and we are going to add another one. Let's set audio play once. And I will select another one. Let's try the sound to be at the back. Okay, that's one. And that's it. So I have in here also the max power that we added and the force amplifier. So luckily this will work. And I always do this guy that I tend to save my job every time because I don't want to lose things. So let's play it up and see what happened. What do we have in here? Empty scene. I will press my spacebar and I have, oh, there we have. I don't know if you're hearing sound. I don't remember if I share my screen with sound, but it's throwing the ball, making a fancy noise. And when I grab it, it's making another noise. So I have there the first part of my game, which is throwing the ball. Now, I don't know, time. I think I'm okay with time. So to begin now thinking about our environment, as I said, we need something to assign to our special awareness layer. And something important in here is that each one of the elements that you add has to have a box collider in order to be considered as an environment. So option number one. You can go, this is one of the fancy things I usually tend to show. You can go to Asset Store. There are lots and lots of environments that you can download for free. So let's put, I had it in there, environment game. And once it searches for it, let me now put this a little bit smaller. Okay. Let me scroll down. Great. So as you can see, there are a lot of environment that you can already download and put the scene on top of this in order to place bugs everywhere, for example, in the desert, or play bugs on this nice mountain-like environment. So, or this one that is a whole environment you could place, and you can move around that, because remember that with Oculus we can move. But in my case, I made a small office, which is our company office, or the idea of it. And what does this one have for you to know? It has a plane, which is the floor. As you can see, it only has a mesh collider. And it has different walls with different drawings. In this case, the logo, which has a box collider and the mesh and nothing else. It has that logo I added to put something in there, something nice, and some light in order for pointing and putting some light to the walls. And that's it. It doesn't have anything else. If I run right now the game, let's go to my game here, you can see that the ball is in here and my floor is in here. So I will put my environment a little bit more down. So let's do a little bit more. Sorry. There. Okay. So now let's see what we have. Let's test this out. Okay, it's not that much lower, but I will try to. Oh, look, the ball dropped and the physics made the ball keep on scrolling after I dropped it. Okay, so in here, drop it with less power because I didn't have that much time grab the ball. So I already have, remember that we set our matrix collider for the ball to interact with the environment. So that's what happened in here. So there's one more thing that we need to do for our game to end, and it's to create these bugs that are the ones that are going to be thrown by the logo. And we have, what do we have? Basically, I have a layer that is a plane, a simple plane, like I tried to create it at small table. And I assigned a box collider to it, and I assigned a rigid body. But the rigid body in this opportunity does not have gravity because I want it to be floating on top of the floor. I didn't want to put it like a table, but I just wanted to create a plane that is on top of my floor. And then I assigned also a rigid body is kinematic enabled because I don't want it I want it don't to be affected by the physics. Okay. So and the other thing I have are the game objects that are the bugs. So what do the bugs have? The bugs have a box collider. They have a rigid body, but the difference between the bug and the plane that acts like a table is that they have the gravity as enabled, because I want the game object, once it's hit by the logo, be dropped. Okay, so they have to have physics in order to drop. And I disabled the is kinematic because I wanted to actually take in consideration with physics. And the other thing is I added is the object manipulator, so we can also move them in case we want them, besides moving the ball. Okay, so let's see what I have in here. I will add it in here. As you can see, I have the bugs in here, which is simply a game object empty. I assigned the layer logo to this one. Oh, this is the logo. Look at that. Okay, so I assigned the layer bugs to this one, and this one has the special awareness. And we also have in here the table, as I mentioned, that has the rigid body set to is kinematic without gravity because it's, as I say, floating. But I have this bug that actually have a rigid body that they are using the gravity and they are not kinematic. So that being said, I would put this a little bit more down because it was too up for me. I will try to put this a little bit. Okay, let's see what. This is always my problem when it comes to putting stuff on. Okay, let's leave it in there, guys. You have to play around with this scenario. So let's try to test this up. So we already have the ball. The only thing we need to do is the ball to, oh, perfect. I just don't know what happened there, guys. Let's try it again. I think I touched something. Hopefully, if not, something is happening. Oh, look at that. The bugs are falling away. Why is that happening? I think it's because I changed the layer in here. But that's not supposed to happen. Let me try to... Something must be wrong in here, guys. I did something wrong. But I think you can get the idea. There. See. No, they fall. Okay. Something is wrong with the table, guys. But you will see something. Let's try to, they are, the bugs right now are like this, right? They didn't fall. They are one by side by this one. So I will drop the ball like this. Okay, they are too big. Let's try more close. Oh, I moved them. At least I did it. Okay, so basically the idea, I think you get it, guys. I do have the scenes running correctly in there, but I probably think there's something wrong with the table that are not taking the, something is wrong in here, but I don't know right now what is it. But the idea is that one, that I already have the event and the event is pushing the bugs, okay? So this is happening and we are firing the event. And that's it. So what else? That's it for the game for today. So recap, needed to take in consideration in order to export this to Oculus. So first of all, the spatial awareness has to be a VR scene. So we need to create our VR scene because we don't have the possibility to use our real environment. Second, everything has to have a collider, okay? In order to be able to manage everything and have their own collider. So then we need to take advantage and use the physics, at least in this game. Then remember, we need to put the XR configuration profile selected to export to Oculus. And we need to import the Oculus integration and we need to edit the project configuration hand tracking support, which is the file in which we selected that we wanted to take control of the hand, both the control and the hands. And this is something that happened to me every time, that when you publish this to Oculus, the first time might not work. So the first time you actually plug your Oculus and you publish your application and you're happy that it's going to run, it doesn't run. But there's nothing wrong with the code. Just try to publish again, and the second time, I don't know why, guys, it will work. Okay? So that's it from my part. It was a pleasure. Hope this was enjoyable. It was easy to understand. And I know that I saw that someone was asking for a GitHub repository. I will have a video and the GitHub repository being launched soon. So girls, are you there?
Hey, well, thank you so much for this really interesting tutorial. I learned a lot.
Okay.
So I have a couple of questions. So I'm just gonna walk through them, mostly from Joost. So thank you very much, Joost, for all your questions. An interesting one is this one. I don't think I saw any Oculus-specific code. Will this work on HoloLens 2?
Yes. Actually, the only thing we need to take in consideration is not to, when I said preparing our scene and preparing our project with importing the Oculus and the XR plugin management, and we selected the Oculus option, we only need to select the the option for mixed reality, and we don't need to import the Oculus plugins, and it will work perfectly with HoloLens 2.
Awesome. So that's a big advantage, of course, that you basically immediately develop for two platforms. So my question related to that would be, if you just want to, you're a Unity developer, you just want to develop something for your Oculus Quest, what's the advantage of using MRTK? Because if you're not familiar with MRTK, it has quite a steep learning curve at first. So maybe can you talk a bit about that?
It's like, I think that's a general question. There are many frameworks available that actually the main goal of having a framework is making your job easier. As you saw, there are a lot of classes I added that actually belong to MRTK that make this even much more easy than actually doing them from scratch or using another framework. Okay. So you could choose another frameworks there. I didn't find any that can handle the same events like MRTK. And from my point of view, the easiest and the nicest, the advantage of this thing is that actually, as you said it, by implementing MRTK and exporting it to your Oculus, it is easy to actually using a multi-platform, creating a multi-platform application. Because if in that same project, I could add also the XR plugin for window mixed reality, and I would, in case that happens, my application, can detect it. If it is a HoloLens, it will not show the environment. And it also can detect if it is an Oculus application, Oculus device, it will show you the environment. So you don't need to port two different applications, but you can port one, and it can detect which one is the device you are using.
Yeah, that's very useful.
It's
so
faster.
I think, yeah. Once you know MRTK. Just some more questions. Let me check for a second. Yeah, he asked about the GitHub repository. You already answered that one. And then there's this one. You're not using the legacy XR, but the new plugin system. Is that correct?
Yeah, I used the new one. Actually, I used the last version of MRTK and the last version of XR plugin management. So people don't have to struggle saying that it doesn't work. It actually worked, guys, but the documentation might not be updated. So, but if you tested it, it can work. And I agree with you, just that MRTK makes life so much easier.
Then there's another very specific question from Joost. Why are you calling, it was in your script, why are you using awake instead of start?
I like to, as you saw the naming convention that I use, I try to be much more familiar to what actually the game does. So I use for example, throw the logo. So I like to use the awake. So my mind says, okay, the application is awakened, so everything needs to be cleared and cleaned. So that's why it's awake.
I think that was the last question. Sjoukje, do you have any?
No, I don't have any
questions.
No.
Well, then I would like to very much thank our speakers. Thank you so much, Ivana, and thank you also, Roel, for those two really cool talks. And we hope to see you again next time. And speaking of next time, let me see. We have the next time is wait. Yes, the 17th of February is the next event, so we hope you're all going to join us again. And we are still looking for speakers. So if you feel like, oh, there's the banner in the way. If you feel like giving a talk, if you have anything interesting to talk about VR, AR, mixed reality, or WebXR, please join us and sign up as a speaker. We're looking for experienced speakers, but new speakers are also always welcome, because this is a community-driven event. It's happening every month, and you can sign up on our website. So please do and become a speaker. And that's it for today, I think.
Yeah.
We, of course, now have our little social event on AltSpace VR. So please come and join us over there. Here's the link. It's also on our meetup page. And see you in AltSpace VR and then live again next month.
Yes. See you next month. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you for watching.